Hey, yo. What's going on, tubers? Welcome back. Jumping back in, even though I'm still kind of getting over my pneumonia. I wanted to, honestly, truthfully this time, I swears, gonna make a real quick video. I've been promising a new mage build. So, I wanted to pop in here today and show you all what I have eventually ended up on as pretty powerful. Don't think it's going to compare to my two-handed melee build, of course, but for mage, it's pretty beasty. So first things first, I'm going to go over the ammunition that I recommend you guys craft and then have. So right here, talking to the alchemist. Once you complete the quests that allow you to unlock them, there's a few of them that I highly recommend. No matter what, no matter which enemies you're going for, just having in your repertoire as the alchemist. So, first and foremost, a lot of people know about this, but just in case you don't, or if you haven't gotten to the end game yet, playing your mage build, the Eternal Acid Bite. Now, this thing is fairly expensive, pretty decent. You got glass, charcoal, sulfur, ammonia, poison sac, nothing super duper crazy, but still fairly pricey. But this is absolutely a must-have. And the other 100% necessary one, in my opinion, is the Eternal Chain Lightning. Now, this thing's very in-game. You see here, level 32. And when I say expensive, 25 steel bars, which might not seem a lot, but 43 silver dust for this thing. That's a lot. If we go over here to look at the, what it takes to make silver dust, you go to your grinding stone, and you check out your silver dust. So that's an additional 43 silver bars. And I'll let you know right now, if you make all 43 at once, it takes about 5 hours in-game. I had to start the crafting on that, and then go do a whole bunch of other stuff before it was ready, so I could finally craft myself this Eternal Chain Lightning. A couple of reasons that this one right here is an absolute must-have, not just for regular enemies, but for bosses specifically. So it does shock damage. It does a pretty good amount of damage just by itself, but then if you see down here, dealing additional stamina damage, which fills the enemy's stun bar. So stunning enemies is actually pretty important and very useful for a mage. You can't tank a whole lot. And this is pretty good to get out of danger real quick. It drops flyers to the ground if it doesn't kill them outright. The other thing is that it jumps. So throwing this into a whole pack of critters all at once, it can actually wreck pretty good on the mobs. I do have the Eternal Fireball, which is another good mobbing charge, but it's not bad. It's pretty decent. It does some healthy damage, and the Eternal one is 17. It's not very high. You can make the regular ones, but it's good to kind of keep on you. And then we've got a couple others. It's personal preference. You've got heals. If you're playing co-op, if you've got a party that you're playing with, having the Eternal Chain heals, the heal channel for level 22. You've got these, which, they're not eternal. They don't stick around. You use them up just like ammunition. Yeah, they're a little bit stronger, generally. Like take a look at the Eternal Ice Bolt. 80 with an 82, it's a level 17, but if you go to the actual Ice Bolt ammunition, it's a 109 with a 109 cost. So that, generally, the ones that aren't Eternal are going to do more damage, but the Eternal is still obviously good if you don't want to grind for resources and carry around a bunch. And you'll notice here in my inventory, I do have the Ice Bolt 2, the charges, simply for their damage, and I'll explain to you why here in a second. Alright, so next thing we're going to go over real quick here is your armor. I go full thaumaturge. Thaumaturge. Obviously, it's one of the max level ones right now that you can craft from your alchemist. I like this one the most specifically because it really focuses on your mana and your staff damage. There's another one that focuses more on wand damage, but I like this one just because of the staff. You've got mana regen, that's less time on the delay, etc., etc., etc. So that's really good to have. As for the rings, I do still rock the Ring of the Ancients. Most of those things don't really help, but the Spirit and the Intelligence do for mages. And then I've got the Exceptional Ring of Mana. Now, if you're worried about running out of mana, you can, double this one up. If you don't have to worry about mana too much, you can double this one up. So the rings are definitely whatever you prefer. That's personal preference there. Okay, foodstuffs. There's only really two that I highly recommend as a mage. The yellow glow soup is above and beyond the best one you can see here. 5 spirit, 5 intelligence. That is 25% added magic damage. And then I think it's another, for every 1 spirit, it's 20 mana. So that's an extra 100 mana. So this one is above and beyond the best one. Then you got the eggs. It does give you 1 little mana recharge, so it helps a little bit. You got your health and your stamina, pretty important. And then I stick to some tried and trues. You got your pumpkin soup, which gives you stamina, health, and frost. And then I actually use this meat wrap because it does give you a little extra intelligence. There's not a whole lot of foods that can help out your mage. So if you look under here, your dexterity doesn't matter, your constitution doesn't matter. However, again, this meat wrap right here does give you 1 little point of intelligence. The others don't. Gives you strength, gives you constitution. If you really care about your health and your health regen, if you're worried about that, you can switch those out. I still like the milkshake. You get some endurance and stamina, but again, not as important for a mage. Unfortunately, the only real mage-specific ones here are under the intelligence. The yellow glow soup is the absolute best. And if you haven't unlocked this yet by finding the yellow mushrooms, this yellow shroud mushroom, which I hadn't for a long time, didn't even know it was a thing until I started messing with the mage build. And unfortunately, these are all mushrooms, so you can only have 1 of them in you at any given time. This one gives you some shroud protection and intelligence, and this one just gives you intelligence. It's not very expensive, but again, if you're going for the absolute tippy top, that's going to be your yellow glow soup. Again, the eggs, they're one of those that you can pretty much use as any character if you want. I do like that it gives you a teeny bit of mana recharge and then your strength. So, like I said, not a whole lot. If you're worried about running out of stamina, you can grab some sweets. If you prefer some of these additional stamina endurance drinks, you can knock those in there. And then, like I said, the dexterity means absolutely nothing to a mage. So, there's our foodstuffs. And last but not least is our skill tree. Now, I'm going to try to get through this pretty quick. A lot of it is still going to be personal preference, which is one of the awesome things about Enshrouded. However, there are some absolute mandatory ones if you're looking for just power in your mage. Best versatility. You see over here in your dessert stomach, I still go to this one. It doesn't matter which character build I'm going for. That extra food slot to me is just way too important. Plus, you use the rebound here with your base stamina regen. Now, another reason specifically that I like to go to this one is over here into the backstab mastery. And I pair that with the backstab damage down here. So, obviously it only matters if you're behind an enemy and hitting him, but that can be particularly important, especially for boss battles, and hopefully I can show you here in a second, the dragon fight. That's an extra 55% damage. That's actually pretty good. And probably wondering why I went up here into the ranger as a mage. there's actually some really, really important ones along the way. So the dexterity here that I use to unlock this doesn't really matter. But then you start getting into stuff like this. Damage dealt with ranged weapons. Now, believe it or not, your mage staffs are ranged weapons. You can actually put them in your ranged weapon slot right here, just like you can your bows. These are ranged, so this is all ranged damage on top of the magical damage. So any of these right here, ranged damage increased by 20%, 15% damage to ranged enemies, 30 damage against flying. And then this isn't absolutely necessary because endurance, dexterity, and stamina, again, not very important. But I do like the added crit chance and crit damage. It's one of those where you could choose to spend these points elsewhere, just depending on personal preference. But I do like that added crit bonus. I got the gliders again, just like before. And then the most important stuff, obviously, is going to be over here on the blue side. All of these blue trees are pretty important. There's a couple of key things to get to that you absolutely want as a mage build. First is this arcane concentration. You're going to get 1 spirit for every 2 levels of the flame. So that's mana. And that's a lot of mana, especially if you're at endgame and your flame level is all the way up at 8. I also really like the blood magic here, that if your mana gets really low, if you're really going crazy, fighting a lot of enemies and your mana drops, it can start restoring your mana and taking health, which, yeah, that sounds bad, draining your health, but there's a lot of things that you can do to mitigate that, including the food that you eat, including your healing spells, including a couple of other key buttons I'll show you here in a second. And along the way, I'm grabbing every single intelligence and spirit button as I can. Here's another one, which is nice. You don't need to have it. It's only when you get a crit, and it's only a 50% chance even if you get a crit. But still nice to have. The one absolutely must-have button in all of the blue tree here, if you're going to be a staff-wielding mage, is this right here, the quick charge. Reduces the staff requirement, the staff charge up time requirement. That cuts it in half. So that is exceptionally important, because if you look at your take this one for example, this one's got the longest cast time out of all of them. It's 3 seconds. So with that skill button right here, this quick charge, it's now 1.5 seconds. Huge difference. Absolutely huge. Have to have this one. So I'll let you go through here and look at some of the other ones. Again, right here, get all the way to the intelligence. You've got mass destruction, chain hits. All of these things are kind of personal preference, but stuff like this. When attacking with a magical weapon, you get a crit hit chance boost. Now, my personal preference, just like melee, you can choose to go into different elements depending on your particular playstyle or what you think is most versatile. I see most people go into the fire damage, and that's great. Again, if you want to do that, there's several different additional buffs to fire damage and stuff like that. You can go all the way here if you just want to melt fell foes. Me, however, I go over here into the ice. The ice damage, obviously, since the Albaneve Summits is currently the final area that they just recently added, it's the hardest. That ice damage is also the most damaging to the majority. Not all of them, but the majority of enemies in the entire game. So I go straight through Sub-Zero. I ignore the lightning. I ignore the fire damage. Not as important to me. Going on down here, you got your healing stuff, which kind of sucks. This isn't really all that important at all, but it gets you down here into the water aura, which not only heals allies if you're playing co-op, but heals yourself as well. So something like this has helps mitigate this. Now, if you run out of mana, it starts sucking your life away. To restore that mana, this right here will help heal you. Pretty important. Obviously, I grab a couple of buttons here. I still love the blink and the emergency blink. If you're perfect, never get hit, not a big deal. But, I mean, I consider myself fairly good, but not perfect. That's still very, very useful. And last but not least is going down in here to the battle mage, and it's mainly to get to this bottom one. 1 intelligence for every 2 levels of the flame. Again, super duper important, because that's 4 points right there you're getting from a level 8 flame, which is 20% added magical damage, because that's what your intelligence does. If you read there, every point into your intelligence increases your magic damage. This is also very, very useful just for survivability. Maximum health is increased 5-fold by the intelligence. You can see over here. Now, I do have some food items in me right now. You see up there in the top left, I do... why y'all, like, creeping on me? That's... All right. Get out of here. You're weirding me out. But this maximum health being increased by your intelligence stat. And even after these, the 2 food buffs that I got going on right now, even after those go away, I'm still going to have 21 base intelligence right here. That's massive. That's 105% extra damage to your magical attacks. You want that. In fact, as you're playing through the game, you know, if you don't have the max number of points available yet, and you're wondering, like, oh, where do I start? You know, I'm slowly working my way up, going through the game, getting extra points. If you're looking just for damage output, this right here is probably the first one you really want to go for. Not only survivability for your health, but then you get to this. Super, super, super duper importante. So, I think I've covered just about it. Oh, except for this. My weapon of choice. Now, this one is absolutely personal preference. Just like my melee build, there were a lot of people in the comments saying, you know, why didn't you use this weapon instead? Or how about this weapon? This one does more damage, etc., etc. You know, damage to the dragon specifically, because that's what I use to test and show off DPS. And it may be true. There may be other weapons that do more damage to just the dragon, or more damage to other types of enemies. But to me, there's a few of them. You know, it's just like this champion's axe for my melee build. Overall, it does more damage to a wider range of enemies. You know, not just one, not just 2 types. It does the most overall to all of them. Same thing with this. Again, this ice magic, I haven't found anything that can really beat it yet. The fire isn't there. The shock isn't there. Even on your wand. You got shroud magic that I do like to use this, but I rarely use the wand. But this one, this crystal water, there's a couple of reasons that I love this one the most. The ice magic is obviously first and foremost the strongest. So no matter what spell you're using, that it's adding that ice magic damage to it already. And if you remember from my skill tree over here, I've pumped up an additional 30% into my ice damage. So that's even more. The increased crit damage by 20% is nice when you get crits. And then this is the other reason that I prefer this wand, this staff, this mana leech. No matter if you're fighting a boss or if you're fighting a bunch of adds, you know, hordes coming at you, on hit, you're instantly leeching damage as mana, which is fantastic. It's going to keep that mana pool for you for way longer. You're going to have more to use, and depending on which spells you're casting, how much damage you're putting out there, you know, if I'm just shooting a bunch of fireballs, it's going to do pretty good. Because if let's say there's a pack of 5 of the VUCA coming at me, which are very susceptible to fire damage, and I'm throwing fireballs at them, and I'm hitting all 5, I'm getting 5% of damage to all of those fed back to me as mana. So I could be getting 40, 50, 60 mana every single fireball I throw into that group. Obviously, you can see how it can build up. So, yeah, that's a quick speed run of everything, I believe. Showed you my armor, showed you my rings, showed you which one of these spells I recommend. I showed you the weapon of choice, the food choices, etc., etc. So, let's just go ahead and zip over to the dragon, and I will show you how it goes. All right, so right here at our shrine, we jumped ahead a little bit. You see there on the left, I popped all of my food items that I had. You know, got to make sure you get all of those buffs. We've got our elixir here. You know, that 30% damage multiplier is a very, very big deal. And you see I did pop the Vukar thing. You know, it's mostly for melee, but I think it gives you a bit of a stamina boost as well. So, still can help you out. But before you go over there to the dragon himself, make sure that you got your staff and it's selected on your chain lightning. And you'll see here in just a second why. Just like your melee builds, the first thing you want to focus on is getting this bugger to the ground. And if you remember, the chain lightning does stun damage. So, as soon as he's down at your level, just start slapping him with them chain lightnings. You see a stun bar there. Okay, and hopefully he does this too. So switch to a shield and start blocking these back. Oh. Yep, he gonna get mad at me. He gonna get mad. That's alright. So, we just want to avoid that. Let him do his business there. Alright. So, avoid that if you can. And hit him with a couple more chain lightnings. And as soon as he's about ready to fall to the ground, switch over to that. Now, here's a little trick. Get up to the top of him. This is his weak spot. Look at this. He's resisting the poison, and look at how much damage I'm doing. That was almost the entire health bar of the dragon in one drop. If you can get there to the back of him. Now, the chain lightning is more than enough to handle these little buggers. Still got to make sure you're avoiding, you know, the dragon and the flame breath, though, because that's... Oop. And, of course, he hits me over here. But... take these little guys out. Now, believe it or not, you can still hit him with your ice bolts even though he's not down. It's still doing some healthy damage. Look at that. I don't even have to knock him down again. Watch this. And you're done, buddy. You're done. Look at that. Now, that's a lot of damage. You know, I can't even do that much damage to the dragon with my melee build. However, that's because it's pretty difficult whenever he falls to get up to the back of him as soon as you possibly can. If you're able to, it's possible you can actually take the dragon out in one phase with that acid bite. And he resists acid. So, it is possible, you know, you don't have to necessarily get up there. If you don't think you're going to get up there in time, switch to your ice bolts and aim right for that hump. Right there. Because if you're getting criticals, if you're getting backstab damage, and he's down on the ground, you're going to be doing 6, 7, 8,000 per shot. Now, again, it's not... that sounds like more damage than the dual-handed melee, but it's not. Mainly because of that charge delay. You know, even with a faster charge delay, you can't get as many shots in as you can with that double-handed melee. I've timed it. It's close. You know, you can still get some pretty decent output using this particular mage build, but that right there is key. If you can get up here when the dragon is downed and stunned, you could potentially take it out in one phase. That's under a minute, and the dragon's down. So, yeah. There you go, guys. That is a heck of a way to beat up the dragon even as a mage. You know, a lot of people are, you know, saying the mage isn't all that good. The archer is better. The ranger, obviously the two-handed melee is just a DPS monster. But don't sleep on the mage. The mage can do some damage, and this is to the dragon. So any of the other bosses, yeah, absolutely nothing. They're down in one shot of that acid bite. It takes a long time to charge, but you see the tick there, and that's against an enemy that is resistant to poison. If that gives you any idea, just what kind of output you can get with this mage build. So that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, leave a like, drop a comment, let me know if it helped you out, if you disagree with something. You know, I'm always up for constructive criticism and feedback. I try to engage with everybody in the comments as much as I can. I'm gonna be doing a couple more build videos on, you know, different character builds. I'm not gonna do the ranger just because everybody's doing that one. You know, it's the quote-unquote meta or whatever for a lot of people. I don't think you need to see another one from me. Not on that. I'm really hoping they do some balancing to the dual daggers. I would love to get just a super fast and furious dagger build going on, but it's just not quite there. So that's it for today. Back to building on my castle and trying out some new things. I am going to start a new run playthrough right from the beginning here soon. So if you want to come along for that fun, plenty of shenanigans, I'm thinking about doing it on the hardest difficulty just to see. You know, I'm fairly good at the game, but you know, it's going to be interesting to say the least. So yeah. Thanks again for checking it out and all the support lately. Really means a lot, and hopefully I see y'all in the next one. Laters.